are fortunate about in Hamilton County? Well, we are lucky to have a levy because some counties don't have levies, and in those counties that haven't been successful passing a levy, they actually are not able to open up reports on children sometimes. So they get a call and they say, I can't take this report. We have nobody to investigate this report. So the good news in Hamilton County, we've never had to do that. We're stretched thin and we have high caseload, but we've never done that. But so the levy generates about $40 million for us locally, and then we're able to use those dollars and maximize them with federal and state dollars. So we're really lucky that we have a really smart person who works at Job and Family Services. He's my CFO, my Chief Financial Officer, and we're getting, for every dollar we have locally, we're bringing another dollar in. So actually, the levy is giving us $80 million. We have $40 million that we get locally, and we're matching it, so that's giving us $80 million. And it costs us in Hamilton County $89 million to run the levy. And so we're making up the difference between federal, some additional federal dollars and state. And something for you to know that I always want to tell people is that the state of Ohio, we are last in the nation in terms of how the state allocates money to the local jurisdictions for child protection. We in Hamilton County get 3% from the state to manage the child welfare system. Other counties get 9%, but nobody gets more than 9%. But we are the worst in the country in how it comes at. So that's something we think about if you want to do it at the state level. And then I would say the federal government also overall has not funded child welfare sufficiently based on the outcomes that we're seeing now and the trauma with our families. So I talked a little bit about the challenges, and I did some data already on slide 8, so I won't go over that again, but that's just something, it talks a little bit more about some of the things I said. But, you know, in slide 9, I talk about, you know, some of the needs that we have, and so what does the levy pay for? Well, the levy helps us purchase foster care. So we spend about $34 million in foster care, and as I mentioned, our numbers are going up. And also pays for support systems to families. So if they need substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, behavioral health treatment. We have a lot of services for parents around parenting, because a lot of us parent how we were taught. So if no one has really taught you how to parent, we have to kind of teach some of our parents how to parent, and some basics in terms of how you want to engage your children. We have intensive services so folks can go in the home, and we apply those when we're really still trying to keep families intact. So we have contracts where we have additional ears and eyes going into the home, helping us provide in-home intensive services. We do a lot now than we ever did before on trauma treatment. So the trauma is also not just working with the children, but also the families. And we're also realizing maybe we can do some trauma work with our foster parents, because the kids are getting placed. They have lots of trauma. They're acting out. We need to teach our foster parents actually now how to manage some of the trauma that they're seeing.
Excuse me, what do you include in the word trauma? I mean, this is...
So if you're a child, for instance, that's, you know, for example, we've had some cases recently with heroin. Families that were completely, you know, managing, could be my family. And my husband, you know, gets addicted to heroin one time, loses his job, then he leaves us, and then I'm working and I lose my job. And then let's just say then I start to use heroin. I start neglecting my family. So the kids then start taking care of themselves. We've had a case recently where an 8-year-old child has been helping her mom shoot up because she knew that we would get called, so she was helping her mom get her heroin so her mom could have her hit for the day and then stay at home there to help take care of her siblings. So that's the kind of trauma we're seeing. We're seeing parents that are sadly bringing in people in their homes that are victimizing the children, both physically and sexually. So there's a lot of trauma around that. And then, of course, you probably heard about the recent case. It's been in the media about the child that was beaten to death by her parents. I mean, we're seeing some horrific cases where children have been beaten. So that's the kind of trauma. And if you're a sibling, if you're not the targeted person, that for whatever reason happens, imagine the trauma for that sibling watching that happen to somebody else. You know, a lot of people, we've had some challenges with our retention. That's on slide 10, which you've heard people talk about us in the media. And I would say, yes, overall, we've had, typically our turnover rate has been about 20%. That's been pretty consistent. We, in last year, had a turnover rate of about 47%. We're back down to about 20%. But in there, I also gave you some stats from other jurisdictions to show you that it's not just Hamilton County that's struggling, it's all of us. And the reason is because we have a lot of our staff are, they're young. They're just out of college, maybe been out a few years. They're working in the field. They're going out and they're seeing horrific things. Some of it, we've also realized we have to do more trauma work with our staff because they're coming back after seeing some of these cases and have to manage some of these families. So our workers are typically, young in the workforce, or even, I've had some cases where I feel like when I just read about it, it's been traumatic. But they're working long hours. They're not paid a lot of money. They're making decisions that really can sometimes be life or death. And there's a lot of media scrutiny. And so sometimes people say, I'm not making a lot of money and that's in the media, this job's too stressful for me. So we're really challenged both locally and nationally with keeping workers involved and staying on. In one county, a woman was talking about her turnover rate. She said her most seasoned worker right now is a year. We're fortunate we have more than that in Hamilton County, but that just gives you a sense of the turnover rate. Another thing about, some of, yes?
The educational requirements are a bachelor's degree.
You have to have a bachelor's degree at a minimum.
And then how many have graduate degrees?
So right now I would say we have about 238 staff, and I would say only about 32% have masters. I mean, part of it is it's expensive to go back to school, and then they might not come back to child welfare. They might go make more money at Children's Hospital or go work for a provider.
In your observation, do the ones with graduate degrees do a better job? Are they better capable of handling the stress?
So I think that's a tough. I think I've seen both, and I think it really gets to a person's ability to really engage a family and understand family dynamics. At the end of the day, it really is that worker's ability to engage, collect good information, take that information from all these different people, and really focus in on the safety decision making. So things that I'm concerned about going forward, so I'm hopeful that the levy will pass. We've always passed with about 70%, so I'm hopeful that we will have that same success this year. But things that are happening down the road, this is on slide 12, is that you probably heard about how the state's changed the medical behavioral health for foster children. So all children in foster care starting in January of 2017 will be put into a managed care for medical, and then by 2018 it will be for behavioral health. And what we know about that is that there's going to be some cost shifting, and that's probably going to happen locally. So we're anticipating about a $10 million cost to the local counties for that shift. We've also been part of what's called a demonstration grant from the federal government called Protect Ohio. That gave us about $10 million locally, which was great dollars. It was very flexible, and there's discussion at the federal level that they're contemplating ending that. And we would know if that's going to be ending in 2018. Of course, you probably know about the tangible personal property tax that's being phased out. When that's completely phased out, that's going to be a cost to us locally of about $6.2 million. And I've already talked to you about just the fact that we never can say no. So when anybody calls or when family presents themselves to us, we work with them. So we've already seen an uptick in our children in terms of foster care placement. And what we're also seeing nationally is that children that are coming into foster care are staying longer because of addictions with heroin. A recent report said that it takes somebody 7 years to get that heroin drive or desire to use. It takes 7 years to get out of your system. So sobriety is a huge issue for heroin users, and we're seeing parents walking away and actually permanently surrendering their kids because their addiction is just more powerful. And if more kids stay longer in care, that's obviously more of a cost to the system. I mentioned it a little bit, but I always think it's good to remind people just about, the state, again, passes on a lot to the local counties. So I would say in child welfare, we are heavily mandated, but there's so many unfunded or underfunded mandates that are passed down to the local counties. And I gave an example of really adult protective services. People might not know we do that. That's in the other part of Job and Family Services, but the state gives us $30,000 to do that job, but we know it costs us $662,000 locally to do the adult protective services. And so we're lucky to have a senior service levy that we can help offset those dollars, but again, that's just another cost shift. And there's also the Every Student Succeeds Act that was just passed by the federal government. Its intention is actually wonderful because it really is focusing in on educational outcomes for foster children to make sure that foster children stay in the same school system and stay within the same school district, but that there's a cost for that. And the state has said, you counties must figure it out. And we think what's going to happen is that between the school, and the schools are up for their levy too right now, it's going to cost each of our systems about $650,000. So, yes.
Is there a difference between foster care and family, when family take care of
There is a difference financially.
and why?
That's a good question.
Why
That's-
such a great difference?
You're absolutely right, and it's a frustration, and it's the federal government that drives that. But this is the sad thing about the federal funding. We get money once a child goes into foster care. We have access to dollars. We draw down what's called 4E dollars from the federal government, so we can bring those dollars in, and this is very frustrating. However, we know long-term it's better for kids to be with family, and we also know that families are stretched right now, so if you want to ask kin to take care of family, they need some kind of financial support. We're not able to give anything near what the foster care rates are. And we use local dollars for that, levy dollars. So that's another frustration that I would say the federal government needs to really take a look at, as well as the state. Now, we're working harder in Hamilton County we have actually more children in kinship care today than we did last year, and we continue to look at that, but it really is, again, $89 million, and we have to kind of figure out how we can spend this money with all these other things happening.
Thank you.
But it's a frustration.